Hey, how's it going? Hope you're doing great today. So, something big just dropped in the Pokemon world, and I know a lot of you have been waiting for any kind of update on Pokemon Legends ZA. The first update is live, version 1.1, and while it might sound small on paper, there's actually quite a bit to talk about when you look closer at what it means, what people are saying, and what this could tell us about the game right before launch. So first off, yes, the update is officially rolling out, and it's being described as a day one patch that adds the data required for online features. That's literally the full note that Nintendo and Game Freak put out. Nothing fancy, no long changelog full of tweaks or fixes, just that one sentence. But if you've been around long enough to know how Pokemon games usually work, you can already read between the lines. It means the online trading system, multiplayer features, maybe the new battle club that's been teased in trailers, all of that is being stitched in before launch. Basically, the update is preparing the foundation for everything that happens once players actually get their hands on the game and start connecting with each other. It's funny, right? Because at first glance, it looks like such a tiny thing, one simple line about online data, but it actually hints at a lot. Game Freak's been known to quietly roll in extra assets or fine-tune server-side systems through these kinds of pre-release patches. Remember what they did with Pokemon Legends Arceus? That first update came out right before launch too, and while the patch notes look bare, it actually smoothed out performance issues and activated all the backend communication for mystery gifts and event connectivity. So it's safe to assume something similar is happening here with ZA. Now, for those of you wondering when you can actually play, the game officially launches on October 16th, 2025. And yes, it's dropping on both the Nintendo Switch and the Switch 2. That alone is a huge deal because it's the first Pokemon title that's been built with cross-generation hardware in mind. Think about that. This isn't just a simple resolution bump or better frame rate. It means they're trying to make a seamless experience across two different generations of consoles. And that's pretty ambitious for a franchise that's historically had some growing pains with hardware transitions. And let's be real, ever since that first trailer dropped earlier this year, the hype has been massive. We've all been speculating what the ZA stands for, how the new Lumiose City is going to look, and whether it's truly the sequel or spiritual successor to Arceus that fans have been waiting for. The aesthetic alone feels like such a leap forward. This futuristic reimagining of Kalos, but stripped down to a more urban, grounded kind of storytelling. And now that this update is live, it's really setting the stage for that next step. The cool part about this whole situation is that even though the patch doesn't unlock any new gameplay or spoilers, it basically confirms that Game Freak and Nintendo are ready. Servers are being synced up, data is being distributed, and the infrastructure is coming online. So while we can't play just yet, the presence of this update means the game's full version is locked in. That Gold Master build is done, certified, and being distributed to players and retailers as we speak. It's the calm before the storm. Now, I know a lot of people online are talking about the leaks that have started appearing in the last few days. Let's address that quickly. Apparently, some early copies made their way out into the wild, and a few screenshots and partial gameplay clips have been surfacing. If you're trying to avoid spoilers, now's the time to mute those hashtags and maybe stay off certain corners of social media for a bit. It always happens with Pokemon. There's always someone out there who somehow manages to get the cartridge early. But if you want the full experience fresh on day one, it's worth being careful right now. But even without spoilers, we already know a decent amount about how this game is structured. Unlike Arceus, which took place in a historical Sinnoh and was all about exploration and research, ZA seems to be flipping the formula. We're back in an urban region, Lumiose City, but not the one you remember from Pokemon X and Y. This version is under redevelopment, full of new districts and layers that reflect both the city's future and its connection to Mega Evolution. That's the big narrative hook this time around. Mega Evolution is back, but it's being reinterpreted, both thematically and mechanically. And let's talk about that for a second, because it's kind of huge. Mega Evolution has been one of the most requested returns from fans for years. Ever since it was phased out after Generation 7, people have been asking Game Freak to bring it back, and now it looks like they've finally done it. But from what we've seen in trailers, it's not just a simple copy-paste of the old mechanic. It looks more refined with some modern design ideas baked in. If they've integrated it into the open-world style that Arceus started, we might be looking at a totally new way to experience battles, something that actually feels cinematic and alive in real time. And speaking of alive, the world design looks incredible. The lighting, reflections, and level of detail in ZA are way beyond what we saw in Scarlet and Violet. It feels like Game Freak took all the lessons from those games and Arceus and built something that finally merges that freedom of movement with a stronger, more optimized engine. Early reports say the game runs smoother on both Switch and Switch 2, which is a relief after the performance issues that plagued Scarlet and Violet. If this patch is already preparing the game for online functionality, it's a sign that they're confident in the stability this time around. Now, one interesting thing people have noticed is the file size difference between the two consoles. On the original Switch, it's around 4 gigabytes, but on the Switch 2, it jumps to roughly 7.7 gigabytes. That might not sound like much, but it could mean the higher res textures and performance enhancements for the new hardware are bundled separately. It's a small but important detail. It tells us Game Freak didn't just upscale the game, they actually built it to take advantage of the Switch 2's extra power. Another point worth mentioning is that this update likely includes the base hooks for future events and DLC. That's been the pattern for most modern Pokemon releases. Mystery gifts, seasonal events, online tournaments, and limited time distributions. When they say adds data required to use online features, that phrase often means it's not just about trading and battling, but also about connecting the game to the long-term event roadmap. Think about how Arceus eventually got those special mission updates and Scarlet and Violet had their Terra Raid events. ZA's framework is probably being set up the same way right now, and this is where you can start to see how Game Freak is planning the next era of Pokemon. ZA isn't just another release. It feels like the start of a new chapter that blends what worked in Arceus with the narrative and structure fans loved in the traditional games. You get the freedom of open exploration, but with a city that feels alive and responsive, where urban and technological themes are front and center. They're also leaning hard into atmosphere this time, luminescent environments, advanced lighting, and environmental storytelling. It's the kind of thing that makes you stop and look around rather than just rush from one objective to the next. So let's circle back to that update for a second. When you think about how simple the note is, adds data required for online features, it's almost poetic how understated it is, because behind that quiet description is the activation of an entire multiplayer ecosystem. People often underestimate how complicated that part of Pokemon's infrastructure is. You've got the trading systems, the online battles, the global linking, the event synchronization. It's a lot of moving pieces. So even if we don't see the changes visually, that single patch is basically the bridge that connects every player worldwide once the game launches. And that brings me to something I really appreciate about this moment in the Pokemon timeline. Even though we're just getting a patch, it's symbolic. It's that little reminder that something massive is right around the corner. The last few years have been such an experimental phase for Game Freak, with Arceus breaking the mold and Scarlet and Violet introducing new mechanics, but struggling technically. Now we're seeing all those experiments come together in one cohesive package. ZA feels like their statement piece, the one that says, okay, we've learned, we've listened, and here's what Pokemon looks like going forward. It's wild to think about how far the series has come since those early days of pixel art and top-down maps. Now we're talking about a fully 3D living city built on modern architecture and narrative depth, and yet the soul of Pokemon, the sense of wonder, the companionship, the exploration, is still there. That's what keeps this series alive. So yeah, that's the story behind Pokemon Legends ZA's first update. It's a small patch on the surface, but underneath it's the sign that everything's ready to go. The servers are prepped, the game is finalized, and we're literally just hours away from stepping back into a world that redefines what a Pokemon adventure can be.